When scientists say geologic timescale, they are referring to five major eras of Earth's existence. During these eras, many important biological and geological events occurred, leading up to the Earth as we know it today. The five eras are Precambrian, made up of Hadean and Archean, Proterozoic, Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and Cenozoic. The Precambrian era began 4.6 billion years ago and ended 2.5 billion years ago. Life formed around 4 billion years ago. Photosynthetic organisms developed 3.5 billion years ago. This is an important milestone because it allowed for the accumulation of oxygen in Earth's otherwise harsh atmosphere. Near the end of this era, stromatolites, or colonial bacteria, developed. This will be important to multicellular organisms later. 2.3 billion years ago, well into the Proterozoic era, the atmosphere became oxygen-rich. This also marks Earth's first mass extinction, but we'll talk about that later. Eukaryotes and then multicellular organisms also formed in this era. In a minute, we'll show you an important puzzle piece to the creation of eukaryotes, endosymbiosis. The first multicellular organisms had many cells that specialized in certain functions, such as filtering water. Later, tissues and then organs would develop. Earth witnessed the first animals near the end of the Proterozoic era. At the beginning of the Paleozoic era, 542 million years ago, the Cambrian explosion was occurring. An unprecedented diversity of life formed in these years. Land plants also developed in the Paleozoic era, as did the first vertebrate land animals. Life was expanding and diversifying. The Mesozoic era is known as the time when dinosaurs ruled the land. Mammals also developed from reptile-like therapsids in this era. Unfortunately, the only descendants of the dinosaurs to survive the mass extinction 65 million years ago are today's birds. Mammals and other small creatures also survived, launching the Earth into the Cenozoic era. Around 2 million years ago, the first hominids evolved. These are the ancestors of today's humans. Pangaea was a supercontinent that formed around 300 million years ago. Evidence of the existence of Pangaea exists in the fossil record, which suggests that many organisms that are on distant continents seem to have common ancestors. This animation illustrates the approximate drift of Pangaea to the modern configuration of Earth's tectonic plates over millions of years. The drifting of continents over Earth's 4.6 billion year history has resulted in several other supercontinents, including Valbara, Kenorland, Columbia, and Rodinia, which is 1.1 billion years old.
The Earth was created 4.6 billion years ago, but it would take a couple billion years for organisms to start roaming the Earth. Scientists believe a key component in the formation of life was self-replicating RNA, but these strands needed a membrane to protect them. Eventually, plasma membranes encapsulated these RNA strands. The first cell was born and was able to maintain different conditions within the membrane than without. Cells slowly became more complex, creating organelles with different functions. Around 3.6 billion years ago, oxygen-producing bacteria formed. Oxygen over time would accumulate in the Earth's atmosphere, which paved the way for oxygen-breathing organisms to develop. At some point, prokaryotic cells ingested other prokaryotic cells. Eventually, they became codependent. This is the endosymbiotic theory. Bacteria cells with mitochondria are the ancestors of humans. These cells protected their precious DNA with a nuclear envelope and became the first eukaryotic cells. 1 billion years ago, multicellular eukaryotic organisms developed from bacteria colonies that depended on each other for survival. These colonies transitioned into polyps, a marine organism attached to the sea floor that was able to filter feed. To better help the polyp eat, they evolved tentacles to direct the food to their primitive mouths. After the polyps developed gills to further help them feed. These simple organisms detached from the ocean floor, developing mobility with the first primitive fins. This gave them an advantage to travel for food. Jawless fish became about from these organisms that were able to move. Fish were able to develop more sophisticated fins, a backbone, and a jaw. The backbone helped create a complex nervous system. The jaw helped them expand their diet. The fins helped create a more agile fish. Certain areas became swampy at times of the year. It became advantageous for fish to be able to travel on land for brief periods of time. The amphibian, which lived in its early life in water and traveled on land, was born.
It could derive oxygen from water and then land, developing a lung system. Another feature that allowed for land was rudimentary legs. This was crucial in allowing later animals, such as reptiles, to come about. These reptiles, unlike their ancestors, were able to survive with greater probability with the adaptation of the amniotic shelled egg. Reptiles were able to survive in harsher and more diverse climates, and gave rise to the therapsid, the first ancestor of mammals. Some of their advantageous traits include ability to regulate body temperature and lactate to feed their young. As the dinosaurs died out, small shrew-like mammals began to populate many parts of the Earth. During the Ice Age, traits like thick fur became a necessity for surviving the harsh climate. Ancestors of modern humans ventured into the trees, using a tail and agile limbs for dexterity. They became curious and social animals with large brains and increased motility. It is easy to see the link between primates such as chimpanzees and humans. We are unique, though, in our ability to stand upright, create tools, and make awesome claymations. During the history of life on Earth, there have been approximately 5 major mass extinctions. These are events that trigger a large population of the species on Earth to die out in a relatively short period of time. The first one occurred 2.5 to 2.2 billion years ago. Oxygen that photosynthetic blue-green algae produced accumulated in the atmosphere and killed off the anaerobes. Organisms that were able to breathe the oxygen survived. The second mass extinction occurred 370 million years ago, in the Paleozoic era. Reef-building corals and many shallow marine animals died from fluctuating sea levels. During this time, we also see the first land vertebrate animals able to adapt to shallow water by walking on land. Land plants removed much carbon dioxide, a greenhouse gas, from the atmosphere, causing global cooling. This devastated populations that could not adapt. At the end of the Permian period, genera, marine species, and land vertebrae were all but wiped out. This may have been caused by erupting Siberian traps, which changed the Earth's climate. 200 million years ago, 1/5 of all marine life was wiped out by the eruption of the Central Atlantic magmatic province. Spewing lava blocked the sun, throwing the Earth into a catastrophic climate roller coaster. Organisms with a 4-chambered heart were better able to efficiently circulate oxygen during this time. The latest and most well-known of the mass extinctions occurred 65 million years ago, marking the end of the dinosaurs. The most prominent theory holds that a giant asteroid hit Earth, killing all of the dinosaurs and other animals that could not adapt. This also marks the beginning of the reign of mammals, from tiny rodent-like species to the many organisms we know today. The small mammals, which could escape the heat, prevailed.